The wind howled a lonely tune, rustling a sea of crimson leaves across the quiet streets of Ashridge. Dressed in a sharply tailored coat that looked both expensive and effortless, Elias Vance moved with the quiet grace of a man who belonged everywhere and nowhere. He had just finished a late dinner with his friend, Dr. Anya Sharma, a brilliant academic at Northwood University, and was now making his way to his car park near Cadence Square Park. With a rare edition poetry book in one hand and an earbud in the other, Elias was lost in a world of his own making until the world intruded. The black sedan appeared out of nowhere, its engine a silent predator. Inside, two figures sat in the gloom, Sergeant Blackwood and his partner, Officer Miller. Their eyes, hard and cold, were fixed on Elias. "Doesn't fit," Blackwood muttered, the words a low rumble in the quiet cabin. "Especially not in that coat." Miller nodded slowly, his gaze sweeping over Elias's immaculate attire. "Definitely not one of the locals." The sedan lurched to a stop by the curb. Elias, sensing the change in the air, pulled out an earbud and stopped. "Hey you," Blackwood barked, his voice slicing through the stillness. "Come here a sec." Elias turned, his movements calm and deliberate. His wallet was already in his hand as he approached. "Good evening, officers. Is there a problem?" Blackwood's gaze was a physical weight. "You live around here?" "My home is on the west side. I was just visiting a friend." Miller snatched the ID, scrutinizing it as if it were a forgery. "What do you do for a living?" "I'm a senior advisor. International relations." Blackwood scoffed. "And that's why you're wearing a $1,000 coat on a Tuesday night?" Elias didn't answer. His fingers tightened around the worn leather of his book. He knew this dance well. "Got an attitude, do you?" Blackwood moved swiftly. One moment Elias was standing, the next he was spun around, his wrists being locked behind him with a sharp click of metal. His book slipped from his grasp and landed on the pavement, its pages fluttering open like a wounded bird. "This is unlawful," Elias stated, his voice tight. "Tell it to the judge," Miller sneered, patting him down. "He'll be thrilled." They found nothing, of course, and shoved him into the back of the car. Elias stared out the window, the city lights a surreal blur. The handcuffs dug into his wrists, but he held his breath, his eyes calm and clear. He said nothing until Miller spoke again, a smirk on his face. "So who are you going to call? Your congressman? The mayor?" Elias turned, his gaze sharp. "Not quite. Closer." Miller laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Who's that?" "Batman." "My brother," Elias said flatly. "The director of the National Security Bureau." The silence that followed was instant and absolute, hitting with the force of a sudden impact. Blackwood stared at him, then let out a sharp, choked laugh. "You're full of it. Give me the phone." Elias, his hands still cuffed behind his back, gave him a small, precise nod. "Dial me in. I'll do the rest." Reluctantly, Blackwood held out his personal phone. Elias, with a surprising dexterity, dialed a number from memory. After 2 attempts, the call connected. "Julian," he said, his voice low and steady. "They got me. Ashridge. Again." There was no reply, just a tense silence on the other end. Then, a voice as cold and steady as a deep sea current said a single word. "Wait." The line went dead. Blackwood stared at the phone. "So now what?" Elias looked him straight in the eyes. "Now we wait." Miles away, in a glass tower overlooking the Capitol, Julian Vance stood before a massive window. He held his phone for a long moment before placing it gently on his mahogany desk. He didn't shout. He didn't swear. He just said, "Marla." His assistant appeared within seconds. "Secure line. Give me the governor's chief of staff. Priority 1. She nodded once and vanished. Julian turned to his desk, his fingers brushing a framed photo of 2 boys standing on the steps of a grand building. Himself and Elias, years ago, on the day he was sworn in. The photo had never felt heavier. Minutes later, the screen of his desk phone flickered to life. A man named Gregory Harris, the governor's chief of staff, appeared, looking disheveled and pale. "Mr. Vance," Harris said, his voice hushed. "I've been told you have a concern." "My brother," Julian said, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. "He's been detained in Ashridge. No charges, no cause." "Fix it. I understand." We're looking into it immediately. No, Julian's voice didn't rise, but the steel within it did. You're acting on it now. I want him released immediately. I want a full report. I want those officers suspended, pending a full review. And I want a formal apology from the precinct tonight. Harris swallowed hard. Understood. Shall I handle this discreetly? Not just you. Bring in the legal counsel, the director of state security, and inform the police commissioner. If this isn't resolved in 2 hours, it becomes a federal incident. The screen went dark. At the precinct, Elias sat in a cold metal chair, still cuffed, his eyes fixed on the clock. Miller paced smugly while Blackwood poured himself coffee. He really thinks his brother is some kind of hero, Blackwood scoffed. He'll be lucky if he doesn't spend the night in a cell. But something shifted. The phone at the front desk rang once, twice, 3 times. The officer on duty picked up and froze. He stood and walked straight to the chief's office, knocking with a tense urgency. Blackwood frowned. What the hell was that about? Then another phone rang, and another. Within minutes, a chain reaction began. The low hum of the station gave way to a series of sharp, ringing phones. Faces went pale. Phones passed from hand to hand like hot potatoes. Elias sat, still, watching it all. Miller returned from the hallway, his smirk gone, replaced by a sickened look. You might want to let him go, he whispered to Blackwood. Blackwood stared. What? The director of the National Security Bureau just called the governor's office. They're flipping out. Blackwood turned toward Elias. For the first time that night, his bravado shattered. Elias met his eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He just said, "Told you." Just as the officer's confidence crumbled, the back door slammed open. Chief Inspector Davies stepped in, his jacket half-buttoned, his face a mask of furious concentration. His boots echoed like a funeral drum. "Where's the detainee?" he barked, his voice an iron command. Blackwood, startled, stood up. "Right here, Chief. We brought him in about an hour ago. No ID, acting suspicious. We haven't logged the report yet." Davies's glare cut across the room. "An hour? And you haven't filed a single line?" "We were just about to," Miller stammered, setting his coffee down with a clatter. The inspector stepped toward Elias, studying him coldly before turning on his men, his voice cutting through the room. "Do you know who this man is?" Blackwood muttered weakly. He didn't identify himself. He acted strange. Davies let out a bitter chuckle. "Strange? I just got calls from headquarters and the governor's office. You want to know who this man is?" The room froze, every agent leaning forward. "This man," Davies said, pointing toward Elias, "is the brother of the director of the National Security Bureau. He is also a senior advisor to the United Nations with partial diplomatic immunity. Did you know that?" Blackwood's face drained of color, while Miller looked like he might be sick. "You made an arrest based on racial profiling," Davies thundered. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Elias allowed himself a faint, grim smile. Davies turned back to him. "Mr. Vance, on behalf of this precinct, I apologize. This should never have happened." Elias's voice was calm and steady. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to the people who don't have a phone call to save them." A heavy silence followed. Then the desk phone rang, its sharp sound jolting everyone. Reyes answered, his face going pale. "Yes, sir. Undersecretary," he whispered before hanging up slowly. "Direct order from the department. Immediate release of Mr. Elias Vance. Highest clearance." Davies gave a single nod of defeat. "Remove the cuffs. Now." Miller fumbled with the key until the handcuffs clicked open. Elias rubbed his wrists, but said nothing. Miller, shaken, scanned the computer. He's spoken at the UN, holds an honorary chair at Oxford, advises European governments. He's global. Blackwood slumped into a chair, broken. Davies tried again. "I can't express how sorry." Elias cut him off. "I don't want rehearsed regrets. This wasn't a mistake. It was a reflection. I wasn't arrested for what I did, but for what you thought I was." A murmur rose at the back. "He's right." Davies bowed his head. Elias slipped on his coat and walked to the door. At the exit, he paused, his words quiet but sharp. "Remember this next time you stop someone like me. Next time, there might not be a phone call to save you." He stepped into the rain. No one spoke. Moments later, a luxury car engine growled outside. 2 men in black suits entered. Agent Davis, State Department. Agent Chun, Diplomatic Liaison. One said, flashing a badge. We're here on behalf of Mr. Vance. They placed documents on the desk, confirming his diplomatic status. Davies accepted them with trembling hands, realizing this was never just about one man. It was about all the others who had never been called back.